My father, David, worked as a train driver, and my mother, Sarah, was an office secretary. They already had my brother Michael, their pride and joy, who was 5 years old when Mom found out she was pregnant with me. She discovered it late, when I was already moving inside her. They didn't want another child, one was enough, they said. We should get rid of it, I overheard Mom telling Dad one night when I was around 6, recounting the story to him for what must have been the 100th time. But those damn doctors said it would be risky for my health. We had no choice. I was that sickly kid, constantly battling one thing or another. Colds, flu, ear infections, you name it. Mom had to take so much time off work to stay home with me that she eventually lost her job. I remember the day she got fired, she came home, looked at me with such disdain, and said, "Well, Amber, I hope you're happy now." The only bright spot in those early years was my grandmother, my father's mother. While Mom would barely touch me when I was sick, Grandma would sweep into our house like a warm breeze, bringing soup and kisses, even when I was contagious. "Come here, my sweet girl," she'd say, wrapping me in her arms while Mom watched from the doorway, shaking her head. "Mom, you'll catch whatever she has," Dad would warn. Grandma would just laugh. "Love is the best medicine," she'd say, kissing my forehead. She helped us financially too, which was the only reason we managed to stay afloat during those years. Mom made sure I knew this, regularly reminding me how much of a burden I was on the family finances. Michael was everything I wasn't: healthy, athletic, the apple of our parents' eyes. While I spent my days in bed or at doctors' offices, he was out playing soccer, winning medals, making our parents proud. They'd beam at him during dinner, asking about his day, his friends, his dreams, while I pushed food around my plate, invisible. Then, almost like magic, when I turned 8, my health took a turn for the better. It was as if my body finally decided to cooperate. No more constant illnesses, no more missed school days, no more doctor visits. Mom was able to go back to work, though her career never recovered to what it had been before. Finally, Mom said when I made it through my first month without getting sick, "Maybe now we can have some normalcy around here." But normalcy, I would learn, didn't mean what I hoped it would. It just meant I was healthy enough to fade into the background of our family portrait, a shadow behind the golden child that was my brother. Grandma kept supporting Dad and our family, making sure we had everything we needed. But what really showed her love for us was when she set up education funds for both Michael and me. Education is the key to everything in life, Grandma would tell us during our weekend visits to her house. Her eyes would sparkle as she spoke about our future. With good education, you can achieve anything you dream of. I spent a lot of time at Grandma's house, not because my parents wanted me to bond with her, but because they wanted time alone with Michael. It became such a routine that I kept a toothbrush and pajamas at her place. "Your parents are taking Michael to his soccer tournament this weekend," Grandma would say, trying to mask the sadness in her voice. "We'll have a girls' weekend, just you and me." I remember one particular Saturday when I was watching TV at her house. Mom had called to say they'd be late picking me up because Michael's basketball game went into overtime. "They won," Grandma said after hanging up the phone. "Your brother scored the winning points." "That's nice," I mumbled, already used to hearing about Michael's achievements. "What would you like to do, sweetheart?" Grandma asked, sitting beside me. "You never talk about your interests." That's when I broke down and told her about the ice skating classes I'd been begging Mom and Dad to let me take. I'd seen the ice rink at the mall and couldn't stop thinking about gliding across that smooth, shiny surface. "Mom said they can't afford it," I explained, picking at a loose thread on my sleeve. "But they just paid for Michael's new soccer gear and basketball shoes last week." A few days later, I worked up the courage to ask about singing lessons. There was a choir at school, and the teacher said I had a nice voice. "Honey, we spend all our extra money on your brother's activities," Mom said without even looking up from her phone. "He's really showing promise in sports. We need to invest in his future." "But Grandma set up education funds for both of us," I argued. "Couldn't we use some of that?" Dad stepped in then, his voice firm. That money is for college, Amber. Michael needs these activities for his college applications. You understand that, right? I didn't understand, actually. I didn't understand why Michael got to try everything he wanted: soccer, basketball, swimming, track, while I sat on the sidelines. I didn't understand why they went to every single one of his games, but never asked what I might want to do. I didn't understand why being their firstborn made him so special and me so forgettable. The pattern continued through elementary school and into middle school. Every time there was a choice between Michael's activities and anything I wanted to do, Michael won. They'd sit in the bleachers cheering at his games, posting proud parent moments on social media, while I did my homework alone at Grandma's house. When Michael got accepted into the most expensive college in the next state, our parents couldn't have been prouder. Money wasn't even a question, they'd make it work, they said. After all, this was their son's future we were talking about. We're so blessed to have such a brilliant boy, Mom gushed during his send-off party. He's going to do amazing things. I stood in the corner, holding a plate of cake I didn't want to eat, watching them fawn over him. Dad had his arm around Michael's shoulders, both of them grinning as Mom took photos for Facebook. Then came the weekend visits. Every other weekend, like clockwork, they'd pack their bags and drive 6 hours to see him. I was never invited. So I'd stay at Grandma's house, scrolling through my phone, watching their weekend adventures unfold on social media. Photo after photo, video after video, Mom, Dad, and Michael at restaurants, at football games, exploring the city together. They looked so happy, so complete. A perfect family of 3. The captions were what hurt the most. Weekend with our pride and joy. Best son ever. Making memories with the light of our lives. Family time with our only hope for the future. Finally, after months of this, I couldn't take it anymore. They were packing for another weekend trip to see Michael when I confronted them. Why do you pretend I don't exist? I asked, my voice shaking. You never mention me in your posts. You never take me with you. It's like you wish I wasn't here. Mom barely looked up from her suitcase. There you go again, always complaining. I'm not complaining, I'm just. You should be grateful you're even here, she cut me off, her voice sharp. Or did you forget I wanted to have an abortion? The words hit me like a slap. Dad just stood there, checking his phone, as if Mom hadn't just said something incredibly cruel to their daughter. That's when it finally clicked. All these years, I'd been trying to find some deeper explanation for why they treated me the way they did. Maybe they were stressed about money. Maybe they were overwhelmed with 2 kids. Maybe they just didn't know how to show love to both children equally. But no. It was much simpler than that. They just didn't like me. They didn't want me. They never had, and they never would. I was the child they were forced to have, the one who ruined their perfect family of 3, the mistake they had to live with. Standing there in our living room, watching them pack for another weekend with their only child, because that's how they saw it, I felt something inside me break. But it wasn't the shattering pain I'd expected. Instead, it was like a chain snapping, freeing me from the desperate need to win their love. Michael's 20th birthday was a big production, like everything else in his life. Mom and Dad not only drove to his college town, but they also arranged to bring along his best friends from high school. They rented out an entire restaurant and planned a huge surprise party. You'll stay at Grandma's that weekend, Mom informed me, not even pretending it was a question. We'll be too busy with the party arrangements. I watched the whole thing unfold through the live stream on Instagram. Mom was doing her usual social media coverage, making sure to capture every moment. Michael's shocked face when he walked into the restaurant. The cheers from his college friends. The emotional speech Dad gave about his only child, making him proud every day. But something was different this time as I sat on Grandma's couch, watching it all on my phone. The familiar ache in my chest wasn't there anymore. Would you like me to turn it off? Grandma asked, noticing me watching the stream. No, I replied, surprising both of us. I'm actually okay. And I was. Somewhere along the line, the pain of being forgotten had dulled into acceptance. I still had Grandma, who showed me what real love felt like. She didn't need social media posts to prove she cared about me, she just did. 2 years later, when I was 17, Michael graduated from college and dropped the big news: he was getting married. His bride-to-be, Patricia, was 35, divorced, with 2 kids of her own. She also happened to be loaded. Can you believe our luck? Mom squealed during dinner the night Michael brought Patricia over. Our son has found such a wonderful, established woman. Patricia sat at our dining table dripping in designer clothes and jewelry, while her 2 children played on expensive tablets. Michael looked at her like he'd won the lottery, which, in our parents' eyes, he had. We're going to throw you the most amazing wedding, Dad declared, already pulling up venues on his phone. Nothing but the best for our boy and his new family. The plans grew more extravagant by the day. Premium venue, gourmet catering, live band, ice sculptures, the works. The costs kept climbing higher and higher. One evening, after hearing them discuss flying in some famous chef for the wedding, I finally asked the question that had been nagging at me. Where are you getting all this money from? I asked during dinner. This must cost a fortune. Mom and Dad exchanged a look I couldn't quite read. That's none of your concern, Amber, Mom said dismissively, waving her hand like she was shooing away an annoying fly. The important thing is making a good impression on Patricia. This wedding needs to be perfect. I looked down at my plate, that old familiar feeling of being an outsider in my own family washing over me again. But this time, there was something else too, a nagging suspicion that they were hiding something. Well, it was sudden. I was deep in my exam preparation when Mom called. Her voice was shaking as she told me Dad had been in a train accident. My stomach dropped. Despite everything, he was still my father. The hospital corridors were eerily quiet when I arrived. I found Dad's room easily. Mom was already there, hovering by his bedside. Dad was awake, propped up against white pillows, his face bruised but not too severely damaged. His eyes were fixed on his phone screen, thumb scrolling restlessly. "Hi, Dad," I said softly. He barely glanced up. "Has Michael called?" he asked Mom, completely ignoring my presence. "Not yet, honey," Mom replied. "I'm sure he will soon." I stood there awkwardly, feeling like an intruder in this scene. The steady beep of the heart monitor filled the silence between us. Finally, Mom turned to me, her face twisted with worry, not for Dad's health, I would soon learn, but for something else entirely. "Your father made a mistake," she said bluntly. "He violated some safety protocols at work. The company's refusing to cover his medical expenses or pay any compensation." Dad shifted uncomfortably in his bed, still staring at his phone. "We need money for his treatment," Mom continued. "A lot of money." Without thinking, I blurted out, "What about my education fund? The one Grandma set up? We could use that, I don't mind. Dad's health is more important than college." I expected gratitude, or at least acknowledgement of my offer. Instead, Mom let out a sharp, bitter laugh that made me flinch. "Oh, Amber," she said, shaking her head. "That money's long gone. We used it for Michael's wedding. We needed to make an impression on Patricia's family." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stood there, trying to process what I was hearing. They had taken my education fund and spent it on Michael's wedding. And now? "You need to get a job after graduation," Mom declared. "Take out a loan. Your father needs this treatment, and you need to help pay for it." The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I stared at my parents, these people who were supposed to love and protect me. In that sterile hospital room, surrounded by the smell of disinfectant and disappointment, I finally understood the full extent of their betrayal. "How could you spend my education money?" I demanded, my voice rising despite the hospital setting. "That wasn't yours to spend. Grandma gave it to you specifically for my future." Mom's face hardened into that familiar look of contempt I'd seen so many times before. But this time, instead of shrinking away, I stood my ground. You have no right to demand answers from us, she spat. None at all. You should be grateful you're even alive to ask questions. Or have you forgotten that I wanted to abort you? The words hung in the air like poison. I'd heard them use my almost abortion against me countless times before, but this time was different. This time, they'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I ran. Past the nurse's station, down the sterile corridors, through the automatic doors, and into the parking lot. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get my phone out of my pocket. Through tears, I managed to dial Grandma's number. Sweetheart, her warm voice came through the speaker. What's wrong? Everything spilled out in a rush: the accident, Dad's treatment, my stolen education fund, Mom's cruel words. As I spoke, my voice kept breaking, but Grandma listened patiently to every word. When I finished, there was a moment of silence before she spoke, her voice steely with determination I'd never heard before. Pack your things, she said firmly. All of them. You're moving in with me. Right now. I'm so sorry I didn't step in sooner. I drove home in a daze, pulled out my suitcases, and started throwing in everything I owned. Clothes, books, the few precious mementos I'd collected over the years. I was halfway through emptying my dresser when I heard the front door slam. What do you think you're doing? Mom's voice cut through the room like a knife. I didn't stop packing. I'm leaving, I'm going to live with Grandma. Oh no, you're not, she said, stepping between me and my suitcase. Your father needs someone to take care of him at the hospital. I'm exhausted from all this. You need to step up and do your part. I laughed, a hollow, bitter sound that surprised even me. My part? Michael's your precious golden child. Why isn't he here helping? Where's your perfect son now? Mom's face crumpled slightly, and for the first time I saw something besides anger in her eyes: fear. Michael, he can't help right now, she admitted, sinking onto my bed. Things aren't good with Patricia. She doesn't give him any money. She just shows him off at parties like he's some trophy husband. And now? She took a shaky breath. Now she's threatening to throw him out. He has nowhere else to go. He'll have to come back home until he finds a job. A job? I couldn't help but scoff. Michael's never worked a day in his life. How long do you think that will take? That's why we need you, Mom said, her voice taking on that manipulative tone I knew so well. Your father needs treatment now. We can't wait for Michael to find work. You need to help us. I zipped up my suitcase with finality. No, I'm done. You stole my education fund. You've treated me like garbage my entire life. I'm not going to take out loans to fix your mistakes. I'm not going to put my life on hold to take care of the father who never cared about me. I'm done. Amber, you can't. Watch me. I grabbed my suitcases, walked past her frozen figure, and headed for the door. At the threshold, I turned back one last time. Try asking your only child for help. I'm sure he'll figure something out. The drive to Grandma's house was a blur, but with each mile, I felt lighter. By the time I pulled into her driveway, I was crying again, but this time, they were tears of relief. It took less than 3 days for my mother to turn my departure into a social media spectacle. The same Facebook account that had pretended I didn't exist for years suddenly couldn't stop talking about me. Heartbroken, her first post began. Our youngest daughter has abandoned us in our time of need. While my husband lies in a hospital bed, she refuses to help her own parents. Instead, she's run away to live with her grandmother. How did we raise such a selfish child? The comments started pouring in immediately. Distant relatives and family friends who'd only seen the carefully curated version of our family life were quick to condemn me. But then came the other voices, the ones who had seen the truth over the years. My cousin Emma commented, "Are you going to tell everyone how you ignored her for years? Or should I?" My Aunt Rachel chimed in, "Funny how you never mentioned Amber in your posts until you needed something from her." Then came my Aunt Lisa's post. As Mom's sister and a family law attorney, her words carried extra weight. "Sarah, I need to warn you publicly since you're ignoring my private messages. You are publicly defaming your minor daughter. Amber is 17. By law, you are still responsible for her care and well-being. The fact that she felt compelled to leave home and that you're now engaging in a social media campaign against her could attract attention from Child Protective Services. Is that what you want? Because I can assure you, if they investigate, they'll find a lot more than just these Facebook posts." Mom deleted her original post after that, but she wasn't done. She showed up at Grandma's house the next morning, barging in without knocking. "Mother," she addressed Grandma, ignoring my presence completely. "You need to talk some sense into Amber. This little rebellion has gone on long enough." Grandma set down her coffee cup with deliberate slowness. I'd never seen her look so stern. "Rebellion," she said quietly. "Is that what you call it when a child finally stands up to years of mistreatment?" "Mistreatment?" Mom scoffed. "We gave her everything." "Everything?" Grandma's voice rose slightly. "You gave everything to Michael. You spent Amber's education fund, money I specifically set aside for her future, on his wedding. A wedding that was nothing but a show to impress a woman who's now threatening to throw him out. You needed to think about both your children's futures," Grandma cut her off. "Instead, you burned through money like there was no tomorrow." "Well, tomorrow's here now, isn't it? And no, I won't be paying for David's treatment." Mom left in tears, but they weren't tears of remorse, they were tears of frustration that her manipulation hadn't worked. As the door slammed behind her, Grandma reached over and squeezed my hand. Within a month of my departure, my parents were forced to sell our family home to cover Dad's medical expenses. They moved into a tiny 2-bedroom apartment in a less desirable part of town, and then Michael showed up on their doorstep. Patricia had finally had enough of his lazy, entitled behavior. She'd kicked him out with nothing but his designer clothes and the expensive watch she'd bought him for their wedding. He arrived at our parents' new apartment expecting the same royal treatment he'd always received. At first, they tried to maintain the illusion. I heard through family gossip that Mom was still cooking his favorite meals and Dad was making excuses for why Michael couldn't find work right away. But reality has a way of breaking through even the strongest denial. "Did you hear?" Grandma told me one morning over breakfast. "Your mother finally told Michael he needs to get a job. He said they owed him a comfortable life since they'd never prepared him for the real world." They had a huge fight about it. Meanwhile, I was building my own life. I graduated high school with good grades, not that my parents noticed, and Grandma helped me enroll in the local community college's accounting program. It wasn't the prestigious university I'd once dreamed of, but it was a solid education that would lead to a stable career. I even landed an internship at a small accounting firm downtown. The pay wasn't much, but the experience was invaluable. My supervisor, Mrs. Chen, actually appreciated my attention to detail, something my parents had always dismissed as being too perfectionist. Living with Grandma was healing in ways I hadn't expected. We developed a comfortable routine, breakfast together before I headed to classes or work, dinner in the evening where we'd talk about our days. She actually listened when I spoke, asked questions about my life, celebrated my small victories. Then came the day she asked me to accompany her to her lawyer's office. "Just some paperwork I need to update," she said casually. I sat in the elegant office, trying not to fidget as her lawyer, Mr. Peterson, pulled out a document. "I'm updating my will," Grandma announced. "I want to make sure everything's properly arranged." My heart stopped as Mr. Peterson began reading. Grandma was leaving everything to me, the house, her savings, even her cherished collection of antique jewelry. "Everything." "Are you sure?" I whispered when we left the office. "What about Dad and Michael?" Grandma took my hand. "Your father and brother have taken enough from you. I won't let them take anything more. This is your future I'm protecting now." I hugged her tight, fighting back tears. "I won't tell them," I promised. "Good," she smiled. "Let them figure out their own futures for once." That night, as I lay in bed in what had become my room, really my room, not just a space I occupied in someone else's house, I thought about how life had changed. My parents and Michael were struggling in their small apartment, fighting over money and blame. Mom had stopped posting on social media entirely. Dad was back at work, but demoted to a desk job. And me? I was thriving. I had a grandmother who loved me, a future I was building for myself, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly wanted. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you're meant to stay with. Sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away and build something new. Something better.